Thank you. Then I'm going to call this regular council meeting to order. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that the land on which each of us is located throughout our community is part of the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Anishinaabe people, and is subject to the Mississaugas Treaty at Niagara 1781 and Between the Lakes Treaty number 3 of 1792. Madam Clerk, the roll call, please. Or sorry, invocation. Let's do invocation first.
Thank you. We meet to serve our community and endeavor to be worthy custodians of all that has been entrusted to us. Let us be concerned only for what will promote good government. May we bring to our council chamber minds that think and hearts that feel, so that in our deliberations we may display imagination, wisdom, and courage, and the will to do the work for the good of all.
Thank you. Now the roll call.
All members of council are present, your worship, with the exception of Councillor Butler.
Thank you. There is one addendum, a notice of motion given by Councillor McDermott with respect to short-term rental appeals is to be heard this evening as a motion. So it will show up as item 12E on our agenda later on during the meeting. There are just a couple of announcements. The first is that on Wednesday, April the 28th is National Day of Mourning. It's a day when all workers across our country recognize the sacrifices made by fellow workers throughout the history of this country. And during a time of COVID-19, a pandemic, it's even more important that we recognize the contributions made by workers to our great society and the things that we enjoy and take for granted. Now more than ever, it's necessary for all of us to appreciate the contributions made by those workers. And so I would hope that on April the 28th, each of you would take time to reflect upon where we are as a nation and how we got here through the labor and the contributions made by the many workers over the centuries, decades. And our flag here at Town Hall will be flying at half staff to recognize that event. Second thing I want to mention is that on May the 1st, it's Doctors' Day. And again, that's a group of individuals that have been called upon to make significant contributions to protecting us, at least during the past 14 months. They have, along with other healthcare workers, been put to the extreme test. And we want to congratulate and thank our physicians in Fort Erie here for helping to keep our community safe and for making sure that we continue to enjoy a good health. So congratulations to our physicians and happy Doctors' Day on May the 1st. That takes us to declarations of pecuniary interest. Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I have a few this evening. The first is consent agenda item 9.22C. That's to receive the Fort Erie SPCA Board of Director minutes. The company I work for has provided contracted services for the Fort Erie SPCA. And I have two others, Bylaw 52-2021 and Bylaw 53-2021. Those are to exempt certain lots in Plan 59M 459 from part lot control, Block 113 Marina Drive. And same 59M-459 from part lot control, Block 114 Plato Drive, because even though we no longer do, the company I work for had been retained as a subcontractor for Marina Green Acres Developments Incorporated and the High Point subdivision. And just an abundance of caution, I'm declaring a pecuniary interest on them.
Okay, so those are bylaws 52 and 53.
Yes, Your Worship.
Thank you. Are there any others? Councillor Zanko.
Thank you, Your Worship. I am going to declare a conflict with regard to Councillor Dubanow's motion regarding reopening of the US-Canada border, as my job is affected if the border does open. So I'm going to err on the side of caution and declare a conflict.
Okay, so that would be item
12D.
12D, yeah. Okay, Madam Clerk, be particularly vigilant because I might be blowing through these things without picking them all up as we go along. Are there any others? If not, then that takes us to notice of upcoming public meetings. Just a couple. Proposed combined official plan and zoning bylaw amendment for a property on Dominion Road owned by Essential Capital, Inc. That will be held on Monday, May the 17th, 2021 at 6 p.m. via video teleconference, and the information report with respect to that application will be available on our website on May 12th, 2021. There's also a public open house with respect to the Crystal Beach secondary plan, number 3. That will be held on Tuesday, May the 18th, 2021, between 5 and 7 p.m., again by video teleconference. And to participate in that, residents should contact Mackenzie Cece of our planning department, either by calling Town Hall 905-871-1600, extension 2514, or going to her email address, which is mceci, so that'd be mceci@forterie.ca. That takes us then to the regional councillors report. Good evening, Councillor Insina.
Good evening, Mayor Redekop, council, and staff, ladies and gentlemen. Hope all are well. I'm going to talk to you first about an update on the Gilmore Lodge. This year in January, the Ministry of Long-Term Care gave its approval of their preliminary plan. And in May of this year, it's anticipated that the ministry will approve the development agreement execution along with the working drawings, so that in June, the tender for construction can be issued. Once the tender is approved by regional council, it's awarded in August, and it is then to be approved by the ministry. Shovels are slated to go into the ground in September of this year, with construction to continue till November 2023. Residents are scheduled to be moved in by December 2023, and that's funding is contingent upon that. They have to be in by the end of December of 2023. The facility is going to have 3 stories, comprised of 5 32-bed resident home areas. Of note, the building is being built to the WELL building standards. It brings a holistic approach and is focused on enhancing residents and staff well-being through the building construction and layout itself. This will be one of 2 facilities in North America that's built to this standard. As you're aware, the facility will also have clinical and administrative offices, support space, commercial kitchen and laundry facilities, rehabilitation center space, a seniors wellness center, an early on child and family care center, and community services area, which will be in support of the community programs that are put on. The other thing I'd like to bring to your attention is the future South Niagara Hospital. A presentation was given to corporate services and was passed through at the region. So Niagara Health is moving forward with the planned South Niagara Hospital. In February of this year, the request for qualifications was released, and we've been followed by the request for proposals in the fall of this year. In the fall of 2022, the RFP will be awarded and the project company will be selected. Groundbreaking is set for later in the fall of 2022, with the completion scheduled for the fall of 2026. The current Niagara Health model has 5 sites: Douglas Memorial, Greater Niagara General, Port Colborne, St. Catharines, and Welland. In 2026-2027, the future vision of Niagara Health calls for 3 sites: St. Catharines, South Niagara, and Welland. Also in St. Catharines, CMHA, Canadian Mental Health Association, will be partnered with Niagara Health in St. Catharines. A nurse practitioner walk-in clinic will be built in Niagara-on-the-Lake. As of yet, no information was put forward, only that Fort Erie and Port Colborne would be future community-based services. Some of the major differences between the three hospitals is that Niagara South, the site has the Center of Excellence for Complex Care, Geriatric Psychiatry, Seniors Wellness and Stroke. It will also deal with kidney care, joint care, and Indigenous healing. There's going to be 30 critical care beds, 170 complex care beds, along with 269 medical surgical beds, totaling 469 beds. There's going to be 8 operating suites and 42 hemodialysis stations. One other thing, the region has reinstated the exchange program for damaged or broken recyclable containers. This had stopped during the last budget, but was reinstituted last week. So if anyone has a damaged or broken recycle bin, you can take them to the Bridge Street landfill where they will be exchanged. And I believe you have to give your name and address for that. Mayor, I'll leave it at that. If there are any questions, Mayor Redekop.
Thank you very much, Councillor Encina. Are there any members of council that have any questions of Councillor Encina? Thank you very much. That gives you an opportunity for an early quit, but I'm suggesting you stick around. That then takes us to presentations and delegations. And Councillor Dubanow, we had some communication earlier today about the possibility of you bringing a motion to request waiving of the rules.
Yeah, Your Worship. I'm wondering if I could move that council waive the rules of procedures so that we can invite a delegation this evening that did not have an opportunity to register before the deadline.
And the delegation?
She's in the attendee area right now. It's Sandy Pierce with Families Are Essential.
Okay, do you have a seconder for that? Councillor Noyes? Any questions or comments by anyone? All those in favor? That is carried. So then Ms. Pierce will appear as Delegation D after Celia Carr. Okay, so then we'll start then with Detective Sergeant Ryan McComber with the Niagara Regional Police. Mr. Davis, could you bring this Detective Sergeant into the meeting, please?
Looks like he's arrived and just needs to turn on his video. There he is.
Hello, everyone.
Good evening. Good evening, DS McComber.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Well, it's all yours. Please proceed.
All right, I know I have a small window to speak, so I tried to just summarize some of the brief things. I'm the Detective Sergeant of Niagara's Human Trafficking Unit. And just to give you a brief overview, we are made up of 3 people, including myself and 2 detective constables. And we're part of the Special Victims Unit, which operates out of the headquarters in Niagara Falls. However, we do work throughout the region. And as of this year, we've also become part of a joint forces strategy. It's coordinated by the OPP, but it gives us the opportunity to be part of multi-jurisdictional investigations that relate to human trafficking. I thought I'd just go through initially the definition for everybody to draw some awareness to human trafficking. When we say human trafficking, we're talking about the recruitment, the transportation, harboring, and exercising control, direction, influence, and the movements of a person, and exploiting that person for the purposes of either sexual exploitation or forced labor. So our unit currently, we're dealing primarily with issues of sexual exploitation. And some of the indicators of human trafficking, which are going to be important for the community and hotel, motel, short-term rentals, just to be aware of and draw attention to it. Human trafficking victims can be any gender, but what we're primarily seeing are females. They make up the bulk of the victims in Canada. A lot of young females are targeted, whether they're teenagers or early 20s. A few of the indicators, we'll see these females isolated and traveling from city to city, from short-term rental or hotels, motels. They're very transient. There's not a lot of freedom, and their movements are restricted by their trafficker. Another indicator may be branding or tattooing that you may see on an individual. That's something that declares ownership by the trafficker over that person. These victims, they commonly work very long hours. There's no days off. They may show signs of sleep deprivation, fatigue, malnourishment, in some cases, drug use. Many victims, they travel with very few items and clothing, very minimal amounts of clothing. Some of the clothing that they may have with them may be relative to that sex work that they're being exploited. A lot of victims, they don't have possession of their own cash. Any funds that they do receive from the sexual services that are being provided is taken by the trafficker and controlled by the trafficker. Another trend we're seeing, a lot of victims, they don't have their physical identification. So the trafficker will be in control of their ID or passports. We're seeing a lot of victims that may have a photograph on their phone of their identification. So just not being able to present those physical documents. Some victims may show signs of physical, emotional abuse. Some show dependency on their trafficker when they're in direct contact or presenting with their trafficker. Communication may be restricted with loved ones, family, friends, and maybe the victim mentions large debts. The trafficker will make them work off what they say is a debt, and they never really get out of that being exploited for those sexual services. Some of the indicators that we deal with hotels and motels. It's an opportunity for people that work at these places to come into contact with the victim. Sometimes the victim will enter on their own. They may show signs that they're distressed or that they're being coerced into signing in. They may not be forthcoming with their identification or information about a vehicle that they may have traveled in. If a trafficker is renting the room, they may not mention the other occupants. They may not mention, but if somebody is looking for another occupant that hasn't been mentioned, trying to identify that person, the obvious signs are going to be repeated traffic, whether it be a short-term rental or hotels and motels. It's going to be that repeated traffic that's attending a residence. That sexual exploitation, what they're doing is they're oftentimes posting online ads, which are being responded to by clients. And throughout the day, you're going to see numerous attendees at whether it be a hotel room or a residence. We're seeing trends of paying by cash and then extending it day by day. And we have numerous resources in Niagara that are available for the victims. The services range from victim services to the YWCA, the Niagara Health System. Depending on the age, Family and Children's Services Niagara. Funding has been received by other resources throughout the region as well. In Fort Erie, we have the Niagara chapter of Native Women through Ontario Native Women's Association. the biggest thing that I want to get across, though, is just the traffickers, they often find people that are vulnerable and then they exploit those vulnerabilities. So for parents or teachers or members of the community, just identifying those vulnerable people and then educating them on the topic of human trafficking and providing that awareness. Big topic recently with teenagers especially is going to be that new social media approach that is going to be targeted by traffickers. So sending out numerous invites to anybody. But again, primarily we're speaking about a female population, but it can be any gender. But just educating our children more about that social media. A lot of the times it's not monitored, whether it be Snapchat or Instagram by parents. And if it's an open account or they get those friend requests from a stranger, that relationship could build very innocently and then lead to a situation of sexual exploitation. So trying to focus on that. Other areas where teens may be found, I know currently with the pandemic, the malls are closed, but malls are also a very big gathering group where there's a little bit of independence shown for those teenagers. And that's a prime location for these traffickers to make approaches to and try and recruit these victims. When we're talking about these victims, it's different, say, in comparison to drug trafficking. Something like drug trafficking, the person has to continuously go back to get more drugs in order to sell those drugs. When we're discussing human trafficking, that's a replenishable resource. So if they can exploit a female, there's no, it's really just a matter of making more dates for that female, taking her from different cities, creating that situation of isolation. And some of the reasons that we don't see a lot of victims coming forward, a lot of the victims, they may go through just fearing for their own safety or the safety of loved ones. Traffickers oftentimes will threaten the person or their loved ones. Some don't even understand that they're being victimized. There may even be a bit of a relationship there where they're in love, or that compassion is shown by their trafficker and they would do anything for this person. Some, if they're coming from out of country, they may be misinformed about their rights here in Canada, and they may not have the same relationship with law enforcement in their own country. So there may be a bit of a distrust issue that has to, we have to get by. And again, the isolation is big, moving from city to city, whether it be throughout the province or throughout the country even. Isolating them, they feel like they don't have that ability or the familiarity with an area, and that communication is limited and controlled by the trafficker. Lastly, just to talk about reporting options. If there's ever an emergency, the go-to is always 911. If it's not an emergency and somebody wants to make a report in regards to human trafficking, we recommend calling our NRPS phone number. Uniform officer can come to attend and take that initial report, which would then be followed up by our unit, or we are available as a unit to contact directly. And we have Victim Services, Niagara, who's available to take a call at any time, and Crime Stoppers. And there is a Canadian human trafficking hotline that also is able to provide resources as well as law enforcement. A lot of the work that we're currently doing, we're making a great effort to try and educate these hotels and motels just about some of the indicators, and just to be proactive in trying to speak with the females that are involved in posting ads. Prostitution is legal in this country. So when we meet these females, we're speaking to them about whether or not they're working independently, trying to establish if they are being trafficked, and then establish that communication with them. We have various resources that we can provide to them. And that's the key for us, is just to try and get that message out there that these resources are now available to help them. So.
Thank you very much, DS McCumber. You're at 10 minutes. That's perfect timing. It's unfortunate that Councillor Butler isn't able to attend this evening. She's the one who's been more or less spearheading our response to the human trafficking, but there may be other councillors that have questions, and if so, Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and through you to I think you said it was Detective Sergeant, if I remember correctly. I'm just, thank you very much for your presentation this evening. I just have two quick questions. With regard to the human trafficking that we have in the area, are there any specific women who are most vulnerable to becoming victims? Are there any demographic related issues, socioeconomic, just anything along those lines?
I would say all of the above. The situations, there could be somebody that's on hard times because of COVID currently and needing that financial money. We see situations of people that are coming from, say, a poor upbringing, people that are struggling with drug abuse. And this is a method to generate that kind of income that's needed to then feed the drug addiction. So we see a variety of it. It is difficult to get the victims sometimes to get on board. But again, that's why we stress that there's so many resources that are available, and they don't necessarily have to be proceeding with charges with us in order to take advantage of those resources that are available.
Thank you. And if I may ask one more question, Your Worship. Yeah, and through you again to the Detective Sergeant, I'm just wondering, you had mentioned early on during your presentation about short-term rentals, and we've worked out, or at least are working through a regulatory and an enforcement framework in Fort Erie. And I'm just wondering, is there anything specific that you think might help us to be able to identify whether a unit is being used for human trafficking? Or I'm just trying to get a feel here, because we're constantly working on ensuring that these regulations that we have in place benefit the community. And I'm just wondering if there's something else we can do to make them, better for those involved.
Yeah, first off, I know a lot of the municipalities are currently going through a licensing process for the short-term rentals, which is great. So I guess you'd be relying heavily on other members of the community to, if they know that there's an operating Airbnb or some type of other short-term rental, just making sure that the council or the town is aware that it's operating like that, so it can be identified. And then those neighbors are going to be key in noticing those identifiers, like that traffic to the residents, the people that are renting it. There's a responsibility on the person that is doing the renting to maybe ensure who's in attendance at the residence, similar to a hotel, and mentioning that a trafficker may rent the hotel but then bring the victim later. Just knowing who's occupying a residence, and again, just kind of monitoring for those indicators and that traffic to the residents.
Yeah, thank you very much for that information. And just quick comment, my daughter turned 7 yesterday, so your comments about social media and stuff like that are very, very appropriate. Thank you for coming this evening. I very much do appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem. You're welcome.
Thank you. Councillor Zanko.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the detective. I'm almost wondering, so we do have licensing for short-term rentals, and I'm wondering if maybe your educational campaign that you had mentioned, trying to educate the actual renters, if there's some sort of a pamphlet that we can provide to our license applications. This might further support your educational campaign. And since we have access to all of the property owners renting out, I don't know, just an idea, but it might be helpful to get that message out a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. Just recently, I was in communication with Crime Stoppers Niagara, and they're in the process of actually creating a pamphlet as well. And just that being one of those reporting resources for people to go to. So we're going to list as many identifiers as we can on there. And then we're going to create a link on our police service website just to indicate human trafficking, our unit, and then some of the indicators will be listed there as well.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Zanko. Any other councillors? Councillor McDermott.
Yes, thank you very kindly, and thank you and your staff for your service. I know this is just a terrible thing that goes on here. It's probably one of the worst crimes there are. My question to you is, do you have a education program within the high schools to alert students about the potential pratfalls from this human trafficking groups?
I haven't had a lot of communication as of now with high schools. I will be speaking with them in the future just to try and get that message out to guidance counselors, just to spread that message amongst teachers so that we can try and identify those vulnerable people and get that message out to not only them, but all students.
Thank you, Worship, Dr. Moore.
Thank you very much. Any other councillors? Thank you very much, Detective Sergeant McCumber. And as Councillor McDermott has said, we appreciate the work of you and your team. It's very important, and this is a particularly heinous type of activity in our communities. So thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Okay, that takes us then to our next delegation, which is Joanne Turner, the Executive Director, and Lisa McCausland, a member of the Board of Directors of the Boys and Girls Club of Niagara.
There, way in.
See, Joanne is here. Yeah, see, Lisa's here. They just need to activate their video. Good evening. Good evening, Joanne. Good evening, Lisa.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're really pleased to be here tonight. I did send a PowerPoint, but I'm not sure how this works. So I think there's probably a moderator or someone that will put that PowerPoint up. Am I correct? And who would that be?
We're going to find out shortly. Kelly, do you have, you don't have that?
I don't have her PowerPoint now. But
Carol,
can,
you have it?
I don't.
Carol, can you share your screen then with that?
Mr. Davis, it's in the O drive.
In the O drive? Okay.
We're working on it.
Honestly, I had trouble getting on the call. And so I appreciate all the technical difficulties that come with, where we're going. And I don't want to waste time. I'm going to try to be brief and quick. So, yeah, that.
Give us a second. We'll get that up.
Or I could just.
Give Mr. Davis a brief opportunity to show us his magic prowess.
Thank you, sir. All right.
So while we're waiting, I know that you had just opened prior to the most recent lockdown.
Almost there.
Okay.
Thank you, digital services. I'm sorry, I was on the call earlier, and I know the council's facing a lot of dire issues, and I'm hoping that our presentation today will be very optimistic and give a lot of hope. And digital services is still working.
Yeah,
Sorry,
did
this
you
is
know-
broadcasting. I really need to start to think about what I'm saying.
Yeah, through you, Lord Mayor. Do you happen to know the name of your presentation?
Kelly,
It was called PP EJFCC Project Update, April
Got it.
26th.
Okay, I got it.
Okay, thank you.
Just let me fire it up here.
when you said fire, the fire chief's ears perked up.
And if I don't know how we can speak about advancing the slides, but if I could just say next slide, would that work for you?
That's fine.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mm.
All right. Everybody see that?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Excellent, and thank you. Oh, okay. Thank you, tech person, for getting this ready. And then I'd like to say good evening to, of course, Mayor Redekop and Council. And thank you for inviting the Boys and Girls Club of Niagara to speak about the status of the E.J. Freeland Center project and its future outlook. Firstly, on behalf of all of those that were involved in working tirelessly on this project over the last 12 months, I am pleased that our report tonight highlights a lot of good news and an optimistic outlook for the future, which is very surprising in these very challenging times. Next slide. Does that work?
Yep.
Okay, that's not what I need. Okay, so what we do know is that at April 2020, the club leased the center from the town of Fort Erie with a view to keep the center open in the short term. Also provide added value programs and services to the residents, and then commence work to ensure added value programs and long-term viability. We already knew at the onset that the project would be challenging due to staggered, we didn't know when we could start, staggered start times, and also we didn't know how the renovation project would work out. But of course, it was made extremely complicated by the onset of a worldwide coronavirus pandemic, which has affected so many people and so many lives all over the world. As we move forward at April 2021, in spite of the challenges, we actually, for 2020, have much to celebrate. Next slide. That's not my right thing. So over the course of the 12 months and navigating through the most uncertain times, the club, with the support of others, can recognize some key accomplishments, which I'd like to go over today. One is the 2020 operating program, 2020 capital performance, and 2020 programs and services, and a future outlook. Next slide. So as presented to the Fort Erie Advisory Committee last month, the 2020 Center Operating Program at December 31st was revenue neutral, meaning that we broke even, which is very surprising during these challenging times. And specifically, the expenses of and $58,308 was offset by revenue. Those expenses were incurred for occupancy, program staff, equipment, and program supplies, but offset incredibly, and I cannot speak enough about the Canadian Emergency Wage Subsidy, which actually saved the Boys and Girls Club in every municipality. Childcare, Boys and Girls Club Foundation, and community contributions. During this pandemic, the club is very grateful to those who have found ways and means to continue to support this important project. Next slide. So a big piece of the long-term success was to complete the renovation project to bring the childcare space up to code. While challenging to complete this work during the pandemic, especially, and dealing with some hiccups, the work was completed in September, with the center childcare program starting in October. And we were able to celebrate a grand opening event held outdoors in masks again on November 8th. Surprisingly, during COVID and the pandemic, the Community Capital Campaign, which was expected to be a third of the cost, was raised at $71,000. And I would be remiss if I did not recognize the lead donors. They were, in fact, Branscombe Family Foundation, the DB Trust, Employment Professionals Canada / Marina Butler, Fantastico Painting, and Wayne H. Redekop. Next slide. So in terms of program services, of course, if I'm certain that it would not be surprising that during the challenges with the staggered starts and when the building would be available and renovations when they could be completed, we were doubly challenged with the pandemic. Those challenges hit every facet of what the Boys and Girls Club does across the region. And they included ongoing closures, openings, and closures, ongoing, like the Journey song, and modified programs due to enrollment limited by social distancing, attitudes to exposure, and but as such, even though the enrollment was a drop in 30 to 50% region-wide, we are very proud of the services that we could provide and hope to use these numbers as a base moving forward. And these are not bad numbers, not at all. We're very proud of them. Next slide. So in terms of the childcare and zone programs and fitness and etc., or sorry, virtual, we know that we were not able to some blips in the renovations to open childcare until October. Yet from October until December, we had 2,705 visits, which supported incredibly a fair share of the occupancy and administration. And I can tell you that today, because we did that, right now in that building, there are 50 children that are being supported with emergency childcare. Next slide. Okay, so what we know now. So the Boys and Girls Club has been very cognizant about what's happening and trying to keep their finger on the pulse of what's happening with the pandemic, society, and worldwide issues. So we know that due to the increases in the COVID cases, new variants of concerns, uncertain vaccination schedules, corresponding government public health restrictions, we're having a board meeting on Wednesday, And we will be dealing with this as that these pieces will continue to apply in the foreseeable future. As such, and maybe different than others, I think the club is looking at accepting this as a new norm. I've heard others speaking on different conferences that we've had and saying, well, the new norm is going to arrive in 2022, or the new norm is going to arrive in 2023. Our view is that if we accept this new norm now, we can build on it. What we're thinking is that we need to establish priorities. And obviously, the provincial government has decided that essential services that are provided by the Boys and Girls Club include, of course, the childcare and the youth shelter that we have in Niagara Falls that serves Niagara Falls riding. But the Boys and Girls Club is also recognizing critical services that we are going to only be allowed to offer when we're allowed to do so through provincial restrictions and public health. And those include the child and youth programs for after school programs for those children that cannot afford childcare. Prior to COVID, there was a lot of literature that published that said 1 in 5 children were suffering from mental health problems. And pandemic studies that were published through Sick Kids Hospital recognized that even at the onset of COVID, 70% of children and youth are experiencing mental health issues during the pandemic. And so as such, we're going to try our very hardest to work together to getting kids back to being kids again. Again, it's critical, but we can only do that when it's safe to do so. In terms of aquatics, in the Niagara riding, right now we are the only public pools that have kept the pools filled and ready to open. And in fact, the club last year invested $7,000 in upgrading the slide in the EJ Freeland Center pool. But there are so many bodies of water in Niagara, and that early water safety training for children is really critical. And without those swim lessons in this riding, we think this is critical to keep children safe. In addition, adult fitness. And I know this was very critical. There are many members of the community that were invested in EJ Freeland with respect to the adult fitness. And the club is cognizant that some of the fitness options for adults in Niagara Falls and St. Catharines are gone forever, the community ones. So as part of the original commitment, the club is committed to filling that need in Fort Erie and expanding to address senior needs, again, when we are allowed to do so through the provincial restrictions and also public health. So lastly, for priorities for 2021, we are going to continue to work to deliver the essential critical program services in accordance with the provincial color code framework. And again, that will be up and down. And follow up on ways to repurpose underutilized space at all locations to support new norm community needs, and continue to communicate with partners and build on programs and program participation. For Mr. McDermott, I would like to say that I know you reached out with respect to programs and services in Fort Erie North. So at current, the club, when it's allowed to do so, will still be providing childcare at St. George in Crystal Beach. And with respect to Fort Erie North, it's going to be very difficult for us to continue to provide programs there without a school. and the schools have shut down for other providers at this point in time. But I can say that if this helps in any way, which I think is very exciting, that the Boys and Girls Club has reached an agreement with the fantastic gymnastics. And so in Fort Erie North, when it's safe to do so, there will be a gymnastics club opening at 20 Lewis Street to serve children and youth in the neighborhood. And then lastly, I'd like to thank the leadership team of the Boys and Girls Club and the town, Fort Erie Advisory Committee, and the community for their continued support. And I would be happy to take questions either now or anytime by email.
Thank you very much, Ms. Turner. And I'm sure that there will be some councillors that will have some questions. We know that it's been a challenging time, and we know that the Boys and Girls Club has made a commitment to meet the needs of not only the boys and girls in the community, but the adults that traditionally have used that facility. So, are there any members of council that have any questions? Councillor Noyes and then Councillor Zanko.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Through you to Joanne. Joanne, I have a few inquiries always about the walking track. Is it open? Is it not? I know it's not open now, but are we still doing that?
Ms. Turner?
Pardon, the walking?
Walking track around the gymnasium, top of the gymnasium.
That is part of the fitness program, and there are a couple of, and I'd be happy to explain. So that's part of the fitness program, and so again, as I said, we were opening programs based on the color-coded provincial framework. So as it worked out through the first quarter of the year, we looked at what the adult fitness would look like. And we worked very hard and had staff move quite a bit of equipment around so that we had used up quite a few different spaces for adult fitness, which would include the walking track and an elaborate scheme to have people scheduled into all these different spaces so that we could provide the programs. And then there was the lockdown on April 1st. So right now with the lockdown, we're not allowed to do that. But even in the red zone, if we get there, and hopefully soon, that will be open as well as a number of other fitness options. I hope that helps. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. That's all, thank you.
Councillor Zanko.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, through you to Joanne. Hi, Joanne. It's
Hi.
nice. Thank you for being here for this presentation. As you know, I very much appreciate the partnership that the town has with the Boys and Girls Club. I know residents do as well. I think the town contributes greatly to this partnership, so does taxpayers. And I do get questions very often about the center that's available for constituents' use. A lot of my constituents, they love the fact that childcare is provided, but they don't have children and they depend on the community center. A lot of them are seniors. Some are over the age of 80. So getting to the facility every day is really their only opportunity to have fitness, but good mental health as well. So I know the last lockdown that we had when we were in red, and you know what, I know this has been a terrible opening for you during COVID, but I do know that the last lockdown that we've had, when we did go into red zoning, the center chose to stay closed for a few weeks after that. I received a lot of calls and I really didn't have much information to give residents as to why you remained closed. Can you just shed some light on
I can. Okay, and neither did we. So as it turned out, the way that the lockdown read to us is that in our certain, in the existing circumstances at the time, we had one room, even though it was large, that could not accommodate the number of clients. And it would be scheduled, which would, again, financial viability is very important. Let's agree that the YMCA has shut down in several locations because of that. We didn't, okay? We were being creative. So what we did was we moved, and this is so unfortunate that this happened. We moved quite a bit of the equipment into different locations in the facility to accommodate the adult fitness. Then we bought a fogger to make sure the equipment was clean after each. We were ready to open, and what we called the red zone adult fitness. We were so ready to do that. And then the lockdown came. So that's unfortunate, but there was a number of efforts put towards that. And if we, in fact, go to the red zone, we are now prepared to do adult fitness. It'll be modified, and but it you know, in the defense of the larger group, it took us a couple of weeks. Again, navigating and being nimble in this time is very difficult. But we did put our heads together. We did come up with a solution. We did have the solution ready to go. We were excited about it. We advertised it. We were taking registrations. And then we went into this lockdown. So we have that program ready to go. We're calling it the Red Zone Fitness Program. And we're prepared to launch it as soon as we get out of this lockdown. I hope that helps.
It does. I'm very happy to hear that. So I can tell my residents that call me that once we go back into red, they can expect the Boys and Girls Club to be opening the community center.
Yes, we have a Red Zone Fitness Program ready to go.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And I guess that's it. That is very good news to hear, though. I just want to reiterate again how important the adult programming is to our community. So I am very happy to hear that. Thank you.
It is definitely on our long-term plan, where that is definitely what we consider a critical service in Fort Erie.
Excellent. Thank you.
Any other councillors? Then thank you very much, Joanne and Lisa. Lisa got to say very little, but the message that was delivered by Joanne, I think, was very well received and certainly gives some optimism to the community as well as council. So thank you very much, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. That then takes us to Celia Carr and Stephen Pissarro on behalf of Big Brothers Big Sisters of South Niagara. So Mr. Davis, if you could bring them in.
They're just, I see them now.
Yep. We have contact. Good evening.
Hi.
So you also have a PowerPoint presentation, I understand?
I'm going to let Stephen start.
Sure. Okay. And did you want to share your screen at the beginning, or?
I'll wait till I'm speaking.
Okay.
Thank
fair
you.
enough.
Oh,
Looks like it may be frozen.
it looks like, yeah, it does.
Give a minute. Either that or he's being very, very rigid. Okay, so I think he's gone, but maybe he'll be able to reconnect.
I see Mr. Pissarro back out in the attendees area. I'm going to bring him back in.
Sure, that's great. Good evening. You're blinking, that means you're unfrozen. So apparently Celia indicates that we're going to start with you, Stephen, and then proceed. So you have to unmute yourself.
There we go. That's unfortunate. I was just complimenting Councillor McDermott. Now everybody missed that.
Please proceed. You're using up your 10 minutes.
Yeah, I know. It's a pleasure to be here. Your worship, members of council, town staff, for the past several years, it's been a privilege of mine to serve on the board of directors for Big Brothers Big Sisters of South Niagara. And annually, I've had the opportunity to come before council to speak about our Bowl for Kids' Sake event. And almost as a ritual, I've had the opportunity to come back a couple months later and award the Mayor's Trophy to the town of Fort Erie for most funds raised of the municipalities within the South Niagara geographical area for Big Brothers Big Sisters. Unfortunately, last year with COVID, the presentation did not happen. However, first place did. The town of Fort Erie once again was tops as far as the municipal teams for raising the most amount of money. And there is an individual that we would like to thank pointedly for that, who year after year after year, regardless of what else is going on, what other commitments he has always done a stellar job of supporting our organization, and that's Councillor George McDermott. So Councillor, we thank you very much for your past participation. And we know that even in advance of tonight's presentation, he's already been working hard on the Rolodex and the phone calls in garnering support for our cause. So Councillor, we can't thank you enough. And to the other members of council and town staff who support Councillor McDermott in his efforts on our behalf, we thank you as well. I will arrange with Councillor McDermott for a socially distanced check and trophy presentation. We do have a little thank you in the form of some Tim Hortons gift cards. I know he uses several of those a day, so we're happy to oblige and keep him stocked up. And we're very appreciative. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to one of the amazing members of our team of Big Brothers Big Sisters South Niagara.
Thank you. Ms. Carr.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can everyone see that?
We can.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so my name is Celia Carr, and I am a member of the fundraising team at Big Brothers Big Sisters of South Niagara. Due to the pandemic, we have had to cancel almost all of our fundraising efforts, including our annual Bowl for Kids' Sake, Golf for Kids' Sake, and several other in-person events. These fundraising events have always played a huge role in supporting our essential mentoring programs that help children and youth in our South Niagara communities reach their potential. In response to COVID-19, we have gotten a little bit creative. We've transitioned our signature Bowl for Kids' Sake event to a new and exciting virtual fundraiser, Move for Kids' Sake. This is a simple, fun fundraiser, or safe and fun fundraiser that will get you moving and will support our kids. All you need to do is sign up, choose a fitness activity, share your personal fundraising link on social media or through email, and watch the donations come in. Then it's time to follow through and get moving. Many of our participants have reached their fundraising goal just by posting to social media twice. I have exceeded my personal fundraising goal by more than $200 just by posting my link on Facebook 3 times. But we could still really use your support to reach our $45,000 goal by the end of May. Participating is easy, and you can choose any fitness activity and any fundraising goal you like. For example, for every $5 you raise, you could walk your dog for 10 minutes, or for every $10 you raise, you could do 25 jumping jacks, or for every $20 you raise, you could run 1 kilometer. There is no minimum pledge amount, and every little bit helps. We have some great prizes and draws for our participants. And if you sign up by April 30th, you will be entered in our early bird draw for a $100 Tim Hortons gift card. Due to the pandemic and restrictions on our normal fundraising activities, we need your support and the support of our communities more than ever. For every $1,000 raised, we can create one match and support it through an entire year through our virtual mentoring programs, ensuring that children and youth stay connected when they need it most. Please join us in getting moving for children and youth right here in Fort Erie and across South Niagara. To sign up, visit southniagara.bigbrothersbigsisters.ca/event. You can also contact me by emailing celia.carr@bigbrothersbigsisters.ca or by calling 905-735-0570, extension 221. Thank you again for the ongoing support you have shown Big Brothers Big Sisters over the years. We can't wait until we can gather in bowling alleys again, but in the meantime, we are looking forward to seeing how you get moving for the kids. Thank you, and please reach out to me if you have any questions about the event.
Thank you very much. That's pretty exciting and very innovative. And I hope that you get really good uptake on that, because I know that you've had great success in fundraising. And Councillor McDermott, I'm not sure which activity he's going to engage in, perhaps fundraising. And I know that he does very well at that. Are there any members of council that have any questions? Councillor McDermott.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks for the kind words, but at the end of the day, it's the people that are nice enough to divvy up when I call. For the most part, that's the way it works. And last year was a special year because we had a team ready to go. I had a hernia operation the day before. So it was just really the pass off of the money, which is always the best part for me. And I'm proud of council because, you know, most of the time they donate to this cause. And I think this is now 6 out of 7 for us as far as the municipality goes, which, and I'm gonna take you up on making sure that trophy gets behind the mayor there so we can have it on television every week. It's the funkiest looking trophy that I've seen. But I guess the message that I have is, you know, mentoring children who either don't have a father or a dad or the benefit of a brother and a sister of their own. Certainly, this is a good work. I've had mentors in my life, and it doesn't sometimes show, but I do. And I certainly appreciate the work that anybody that takes on a big brother or big sister does. So I'm always glad to help out in these causes, and I'm sure every councillor will be as well. Most of them will be right behind us and send us a check somewhere down the line. So I appreciate your efforts and keep up the good work.
Thank you, Councillor.
Any other councillors? If not, then good luck with your Move for Kids' Sake fundraising event. I'm sure that you'll do very well, and we look forward to hearing back after the event is closed. So good luck.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, then that takes us to the final delegation, and that is the add-on Sandy Pierce. So Mr. Davis, if you could bring her in. And this is with respect to Councillor Dubanow's motion regarding the border. Good evening, Ms. Pierce.
Mayor, hi, how are you? Thank you so much for having me here.
You're more than welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and also all the councilors for giving me this opportunity to speak. I am speaking on behalf of all the families that have been separated from the border closure. I asked to join you this evening to bring awareness of the struggles that have been what we have been going through since the border has been closed since March 2020. Thousands of families have been torn apart for 14 months now with no end in sight. I have belonged to several groups where we have all been joined together, thousands and thousands of us in the last year that have been separated. I have heard so many heartbreaking stories, and I'm going through something as well with my family being over on the other side of the border. And I decided nothing was working that we were trying to do to be reunited with our families. We have been advised to write our MPs, write several politicians, try to bring awareness, but nothing has been working. So after a year, I decided to start a group to just make people aware of what we're going through, because no one seems to realize what we're going through. And us in Fort Erie, Buffalo especially, we're in such a blended community where there's so many families that are separated. So 6 weeks ago, I started my own group. It's called Families Are Essential. We already have 1,200 members. And I was trying to maybe bring a little bit more awareness because nothing that we were doing was helping us in any way. So we were doing peaceful protests. We started doing peaceful protests at Mather's Arch a few weeks ago. We had enough people that we did the American side as well, and the Windsor Ambassador Bridge also. So I heard all these horrible stories and I decided I had to do something. So with the stay-at-home order coming in effect recently, it's been a little bit hard to try and make people aware of what I am doing. So I am talking about immediate family members, parents, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, husbands, wives. We're all separated with no end in sight. My immediate family has not been together since Christmas of 2019. I'm talking about my parents in their 90s. We only live 15 minutes away from each other. The mental toll that we are experiencing is too hard for us to bear any longer. We don't know what to do. There are family members who have passed away or who are terminally ill, who are not able to be with their families. People have passed away alone, not being able to see their immediate family members or to say their final goodbyes. I have a 93-year-old dad who lives 10 minutes away from me, a 90-year-old mom, a 92-year-old stepdad. They all need my help. I need to go back there on a regular basis. After a year of going back and doing a 14-day quarantine in mid-February, Justin Trudeau made it even harder for us to be reunited. I am thankful I can go back and see my family. The other members of my family aren't as lucky. They've been separated. I am an American citizen. I live in Fort Erie for 42 years. I can come back and see my parents, but I can't do that on a regular basis because of the 14-day quarantine. And now mid-February, they put into effect Canadian side that you have to present the border with a 72-hour negative COVID test. You can take another one when you cross the border, or you can take it home to take within 24 hours. And also another one taken on the 10th day of quarantine. You have to call Health Canada on a daily basis, answer questions, tell them what you're doing and when you crossed. They actually call you too as well and ask you questions, make sure you're quarantining at home. And they also come knocking at your door now to make sure that you're quarantining as well. If you do not get your results back from your 10th day of quarantine in your 14 days, you have to stay in quarantine up to 16 to 17 days. So there are people that are terminally ill. There's a family in Fort Erie. Her only child is in Williamsville, 15 minutes away. She's terminally ill with cancer, with ALS. She is having a hard time visiting her daughter. Her daughter can't come here because of the restrictions and the quarantining and her numerous doctor's appointments that she has to go to. These families have no end in sight. The border is closed month after month after month. Every month is like another stab in your heart to find out the border closure is once again extended for another month. We need a light at the end of the tunnel. We are not asking for open borders. We are asking for some kind of a plan to slowly open the border. We do not want to go shopping. We don't want to, it's nothing involved with tourism. We just want to be able to see our families who need us. Just imagine not being able to be with your family members, your immediate family members. You miss Christmases, birthdays, all kinds of funerals, all kinds of things that families do together. Please move this request forward to some kind of a plan that will enable us family members to once again be reunited with our families. And I guess that's all I have to say. I'm just pleading that something needs to be done for families to be able to see each other.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pierce. We appreciate your passion with respect to this issue. I can assure you that when the border mayors have discussed this issue with the federal minister responsible for the border, Minister of Security, William Blair, we have raised the issue of families, particularly with respect to compassionate situations where there are family members on one side of the border trying to care for or trying to assist other family members on the other side of the border. So the most frustrating part, and I believe the motion that's going to be before us later on this evening addresses the point that we've been trying to make, which is the federal government should at least provide some type of markers and a timetable, something that people can take a look at and understand, and then look at protocols that can facilitate the movement of some individuals. What I find most frustrating is that, and I'm sure every member of council and maybe everybody who's listening to this meeting, is that there seem to be individuals who find ways to circumvent the rules. And that makes it difficult for people who are trying to follow the rules. And I'm sure you're familiar with some of the situations where people seem to be able to get around the rules. That's very frustrating. In any event, this is an opportunity for members of council to ask questions, not to speak like I just did, mea culpa, but you will, there will be the resolution later on, and I'm sure that Councillor Dubanow will speak at that point. Do any members of council have any questions of Ms. Pierce? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop, through you to Ms. Pierce. Ms. Pierce, thank you for your presentation, and I think all of us really feel for you. I know I have grandchildren. They're not on the other side of the border, but I haven't seen them since June of last year. So I miss them terribly, even like the physical contact. I can see them on Zoom, but I can't hug them or kiss them. So I think we all get it. My one question in regards to border crossing is that we get a lot of the residents that are very concerned about the variants and the pandemic and everything else. I think they would be much more comfortable. I'm speaking for myself because I know I would be, if vaccination, and that you had to be vaccinated to be able to cross the border and come back and forth, and that would allow you a fair amount of freedom if that was part of the guideline. I just wondered what your thought or what you thought your group would feel towards that.
Well, funny that you mentioned it, because me being a U.S. Army veteran, I luckily was able to cross the border being a U.S. citizen. And I have I'm in Buffalo right now in Blaisdell with my 93-year-old dad, taking care of him, using the opportunity to take care of my elderly parents who are in their 90s. And I am lucky, like I said, I'm a veteran, so I was able to come across and stay for 21 days. I already had my first vaccine on Friday. I am staying. I had to leave my home, and I'm staying here till May 13th to my second vaccine, and then I will return back to Fort Erie because I have been separated from my family for so long, as well as all my children and grandchildren, that I know that I could have gotten the vaccine in Canada. My husband got it last Monday. I could have went with him as well, but I wouldn't have been able to get my second vaccine until the end of July. Fully vaccinated 2 weeks later, I wouldn't have been able to cross till August, mid-August. So I chose to leave my home, leave my daughters, and I came to live with my dad for 21 days so that I can be fully vaccinated. And the reason why the border was closed in the first place was to keep Canadians safe. And I understand that. The states were out of control in the beginning, but things have changed. The tables have reversed now. They're in control now. Canada is in bad shape. And hopefully, I believe that Biden will be sending vaccines over to Canada to help them out, being the nice neighbors that they are. But I am here now. I'm taking care of my elderly parents, and I am going to be fully vaccinated. So that's another issue too. Like if I come back fully vaccinated, will I have to require 3 negative COVID tests and possibly quarantine for 17 days again? Like there has to be some kind of lesser restrictions for people in different situations. I have applied last year to be caregiver to my elderly parents to be able to cross here and be considered essential, but I was denied. So I've just been trying to do whatever I can to one day, hopefully, not have to be so separated from everyone.
Councillor Noyes.
Nothing further. Thank you, Ms. Pearson. I wish
You're
you all
welcome.
the best.
Oh, thank you so much. You too. You as well with your grandchildren and your
Any
family.
other, thank you. Any other councillors? Thank you very much, Ms. Pierce. I'm glad we had the opportunity to hear from you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Stick around for a little bit and you'll hear Councillor Dubanow present his motion.
Okay, thank you.
But you'll have to do that in the waiting room. That then takes us to the consent agenda, and we have an item that has to be removed from that item, consent agenda. Councillor Lubberts, you have the motion. The item to be excluded and dealt with separately is 9.2.2C, which is the minutes of the SPCA meeting of April 13th. So let's proceed with, are there any other items that anyone wishes removed from the consent agenda? If not, then Councillor Lubberts, could you proceed with the resolution for adopting the consent agenda with the exception of 9.2.2C, please?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McDermott. The council approves the consent agenda items as recommended, save and except for items 9.2.2C.
Correct. Are there any questions or comments with respect to any of the items in the consent agenda? If not, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. So Councillor Lubberts, could you then proceed to request that council approve item 9.2.2C as recommended?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott. That council approves consent agenda item 9.2.2C.
Are there any questions or comments with respect to those minutes? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation? And no one opposed. Duly noted that Councillor Dubanow did not vote. So that takes us then to report PDS 31-2021. And Councillor Zanko, you have the resolution for that report.
Yes, I do. Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dubanow, that PDS 31-2021 proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendment 255 High Street, Susan Smythe, Quartet Group Inc. agent, Niagara Regional Housing applicant, Lyons Douglas Heights Senior Residence, care of Jane Dodd, owner. The council approves the amendments to the town's official plan and zoning bylaw number 129-90 as detailed in Appendix 8 and Appendix 9 of report number PDS 31-2021 for the lands known as 255 High Street, and further that council waives the cash in lieu of parkland dedication requirements for the proposed development, and the applicant shall provide increased landscaping and or outdoor amenities areas on site to be approved through the site plan control, and further that council directs staff to prepare the necessary bylaw.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Dubanow and then Councillor Noyes.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I'm wondering if I could move an amendment for council's consideration. And the amendment would be that council waives the development charges for the 33 units rented at market. And I'm just wondering if there's perhaps a seconder.
Councillor McDermott.
Would I be able to speak to that, Your Worship?
It's on the floor.
Thank you. The reason I'm moving this amendment is based on the discussions that we had during the public meeting. There's such a small difference. I think it was less than $100 a month. For some reason, the number 30 or 80 is bouncing around in my mind, and I apologize for the difference between the units that were being rented at market versus what would qualify as affordable within the Niagara region. And I think in light of the fact that this project is being moved forward by Niagara Regional Housing and that it is being backed by a nonprofit group within Fort Erie that is already operating a seniors building, and in light of the information that received from our housing report highlighting the core housing need, particularly among seniors, that the small amount of money of development charges, I believe it's on page 12 of the report, it's just under $300,000. If we can waive that, that in turn might reduce the cost of the project, which may allow the applicant to reduce the rent of those market units and then potentially come closer to achieving that affordable level. So that's why I'm moving this amendment here. And I think it might be something we have to have discussions about in the future with regard to our development charge bylaw. But for now, I'm putting this forward, and that's my reason why.
Any other speakers to the amendment? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop, through Councillor Dubanow. I do get your sentiment, and that, you know, the Lions are such a wonderful organization, and this town definitely needs senior housing. My only caveat would be is that when they gave up parkland dedication of the 5%, so we've already the town has already kind of contributed something, and in return we requested that they improve some of the landscaping around and some of the amenities. So it was kind of like a give and a take. And I'm just wondering if there'd be a give and a take for waiving the development fees also. I don't know if you know where I'm going with this. Is that one of my concerns is that there are no 2-bedroom units that are affordable. And that if they could consider, I'm not saying I'm going to hold their feet to the fire on this. And I'm going to support your motion depending on what other people hear. But I do hope that if they get another $300,000 that they weren't planning on, so to speak, that they can look at perhaps making at least, perhaps there's 19 2-bedroom units, at least 2 of those bedroom units affordable. So, or rent geared to income. So I'm not going to hold their feet to the fire, but I do hope that they do consider that, because if we take $300,000 less, then that would definitely should cover the cost that they might be losing from a market rent to an affordable money. And I don't disagree that there is a need for single apartments. They are the biggest need. I do recognize that, but there's still 14% of our in-need population, of our senior in-need population, that do require 2-bedroom, or have 2 people, and for various reasons would require 2 bedrooms. So so those are my comments. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Just to follow up on what Councillor Noyes was saying, can we also, if that's the case, that there is a need, can we have the Lions come back and let us know if they can provide some 2-bedroom units under the reduced rents? I know Councillor Noyes is just putting forward something that they would consider, but I would like to know if, when they consider it, if they agree that they would do it, to let us know that they are going to do it.
My understanding is that the Regional Niagara Housing has a role to play in this, and Ms. Dolch, you can correct me if I'm wrong, and that's primarily to put this project in a position where it can avoid a lot of the fees and charges that the municipality would ordinarily levy, because Regional Niagara Housing is involved, and the municipality has an agreement with the region in that regard. The 33 units that aren't affordable or rent geared to income, those are units that the Lions Club would have complete control over. Is that correct? Is my understanding correct on this?
Your worship, that's correct. They would be run by the Lions, and it's just market rent, standard market rent. They could charge whatever they want. They have indicated what they were charging at the public meeting, but it's really market rent.
Right. And currently there's no restriction. There are restrictions on the rent geared to income and the affordable units, which are operated through Regional Niagara Housing, but there are no restrictions on the 33 units that are not encompassed in the affordable housing component.
That's correct, your worship. There's certain rules with the CMHC funding that they have, as well as through the Niagara Region, their requirements.
Do you have any comments with respect to the amendment to waive the DC charges on those 33 units?
My only concern is obviously Lions is a not-for-profit, which is great. The only concern is obviously future requests that may come in for similar market-driven units to seniors as well through other developers and other groups.
Mr. Jansen, if this $298,000 is waived, my understanding is that the municipality still has to somehow provide for that in the calculations of development charges when we do our funding. At least that was the impression I've been left with through the region. How would this work?
Yeah, you're right. We have, I think it's considered more of a best practice legislatively. I think we've had an interpretation a couple of ways, but it definitely is best practice that you fund any exemptions given. So annually we will put forward to council funding of any exemptions. Currently we have a 0-rated industrial charge, as well as exemptions that we provide through the brownfields program. So you're right, we would be seeking to fund any of these types of exemptions through the levy.
And this $298,000 then would come from the other taxpayers in the municipality.
That's correct.
Any other questions or comments by members of council? Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I'm just wondering if perhaps staff or Ms. Delwaria can comment on this. My understanding is that as part of getting a Canadian CMHC mortgage to actually fund this project, that all of the figures and all of the rent and everything else would be included as part of that mortgage. Can someone confirm if they would be subjected to a specific rent for market rent as part of the terms of their CMHC mortgage?
Ms. Delwaria, would you know that, or Ms. Dolch?
It's my understanding, Your Worship, it's my understanding that the market rent was just $100 more than, the market rent would still be affordable. That's my recollection from the last meeting. I think for 1 bedroom, it was $909, and for 2 bedrooms, it was $930, which was still affordable. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question right, but
I think the question is whether CMHC has a requirement with respect to the amount that can be charged for rent. Was that your point?
Yeah, because I agree with the sentiment you brought up. If they have free reign to jack the rents up to something that would be, the same as another apartment, I would be very concerned. But if they have limitations on what they can do with the market rent per the terms of their mortgage, I would feel much more comfortable. And that's my understanding. And that's why I moved forward this. So just with regard to some of the issues that have been raised at council here, I'm just wondering if we can get someone that can confirm that the development charges being waived, that those market rent units, there's still a limitation on what they can charge for rent.
Why don't I suggest this, Councillor Dubanow, since that's information that isn't going to be available tonight, and if we vote on this, then we voted on it. I'm wondering whether it wouldn't be prudent for us to deal with the recommendations in the report, which will then allow the matter to continue on, and have you defer your amendment to the next committee meeting, which is May the 10th, by which time we'll have an answer with respect to that.
I'd be okay with that, Your Worship, because I think we need clarification on that before we make a decision. Like, it's my understanding that that's what it is, but if we're making the decision, we need that information to be presented to us here.
Okay, so Madam Clerk, do we need a motion to defer this to May the 10th, or can the mover?
I would suggest, yes, because we're in regular. If he wants to withdraw, essentially that's what you're suggesting, right? That he withdraw this now for the next meeting?
No, I'm suggesting that he's made the amendment. There's some information that we need, I think, before council can vote on it. So rather than have him withdraw it, just put it over till May the 10th. We can deal with the rest of the report as it is, deal with the amendment later.
I could suggest that he amend this just to say that it be brought back towards council for the May 10th meeting.
Okay.
I'd be good with that.
Okay, and the seconder on that was Councillor McDermott. Are you good with that? Okay, so is everyone clear? The motion to amend to waive the outstanding DC charges referred to in the report would be brought back before council on May the 10th. Everybody clear on that? Okay, so my next question, Madam Clerk, do we need to vote on that?
I'm going to say yes.
Yeah, I think you're right. Okay.
Seconded it, then yes.
Okay, so let's vote on that. All those in agreement with the motion to amend being deferred to May the 10th. Okay, so that's going to May the 10th. So try not to make this any more complicated than I have to. Everyone understands what we're doing, so we would be approving the recommendations, moving this forward, but dealing with that amendment on May the 10th. Are there any other further questions with respect to the report? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. I did have a chance to speak to Mr. Walsh on this. I noticed in the report that from the region and some of their requirements, there was some concern about the extraneous flow in the sanitary pumping station and not having capacity, and perhaps having too much wet weather infiltration. And that's going to be a big, how to put it, a deciding factor on if and when this can go forward. And I just wondered if Mr. Walsh could perhaps fill us in on the current situation and what we hope to achieve.
Mr. Walsh.
Thank you. When we undertook our wastewater master plan presented to council back in 2018, the sewer shed of the Catherine Street pumping station was identified as an area of high inflow and infiltration. We've been concentrating a lot of our efforts in this area to specifically identify where the issues are so that we can take quick and appropriate action as necessary to gain capacity back in the system.
Councillor Noyes.
I appreciate that explanation. Do we have any timelines? They've given us particular benchmarks. How close are we to their benchmarks?
We will likely see action in 2022 through our sewer relining program.
Thank you, that's all.
Any other questions or comments? If none, all those in favor of the report's recommendations? None opposed, that is carried. That then takes us to new business and inquiries, and there are a number of resolutions contained therein. And Councillor Zanko, you have the first one dealing with communities in bloom.
Yes, I do. And I do need a seconder for this one, please, Your Worship. Okay. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McDermott, that council accepts the resignation of Ruth Vold Markle from the Communities in Blooms Committee, and further that council directs staff to proceed with the filling of the vacancy in accordance with the procedural bylaw.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor of the resolution? None opposed, that is carried. And Councillor Zanko, you have the next resolution.
Yes, I do. And I would need a seconder for this one too.
I'll give it to Councillor Dubanow.
Okay. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dubanow, that council sends its condolences to the family of Roger Ricker upon his passing, member of Community in Bloom, and further that council directs staff with filling the vacancy in accordance with the procedural bylaw.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor of the resolution? None opposed, that is carried. That takes us to National Accessibility Week. Councillor McDermott.
Yes, thank you, Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dubanow, that council proclaims May 31st to June 4th, 2021 as National Accessibility Week.
Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. I just wanted to comment on what a wonderful group we have in our town accessibility group, wonderful staff support, and that my only concern is that we have not been able to meet for over a year now formally because of the restrictions on this type of meeting. And so I'm hoping that at some point we can't do any votes. We've had a few Zoom meetings, but they're all unofficial. It would be nice to be able to be official at some time in the future. Thank you.
I think we're all looking for something to be official in the future. The sooner the better. If there are no other questions or comments, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the resolution? None opposed, that is carried. That then takes us to the resolution regarding Doctors' Day. Councillor Dubanow.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott. Whereas May 1st Whereas May 1st is Doctors' Day in Ontario, and whereas the physicians in the town of Fort Erie work tirelessly to ensure that patient experience is person-centered with exemplary care being given to all, and whereas many of our physicians work outside of their family practice, whether it is staffing our urgent care clinic, our long-term care homes, our retirement homes, our palliative care unit, acting as coroner, oversight for the NP, I'm assuming that means nurse practitioner program, hospitalist care, and teaching the next generation of physicians. And whereas as a small town, we are one of the few that still has specialist service provisions that includes ophthalmology, respirology, internal medicine, cardiology, and many more clinics that operate out of Douglas Memorial Hospital and our primary care sites. And now therefore be it resolved that Council, on behalf of all citizens of the town of Fort Erie, expresses appreciation and gratitude to all physicians in the town of Fort Erie for their service, dedication, and commitment to patient care in our community.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor of the resolution? None opposed, that is carried. Councillor Noyes, you have the next resolution regarding the 2021 census.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott that council supports the 2021 census and encourages all residents to complete their census questionnaire online at www.census.gc.ca, as accurate and complete census data supports programs and services that will benefit our community.
Are there any questions or comments? Just on an aside, I was doing some research on my family history and happened to come across the 1921 census, which was very revealing. My family was invading the territory even then. All those in favor of the resolution? None opposed, that is carried. There is a memo that Signe Hansen, Manager of Community Planning, provided to us with respect to British Centennial Park multi-use court lighting arising out of some inquiries made by Councillor Zanko. Did anyone have any questions or comments with respect to that memo? Okay. Are there any other inquiries or, items of new business? Mr. Cookett, there were on our April 12th meeting, there were 3 items that we're to hear back from. One had to do with light replacement on streets. One had to do with the MDRA application. One had to do with McDonald Drive. And I take it that at some point, perhaps May the 10th, council will be receiving a response to those inquiries?
That's correct, Your Worship. Mr. Walsh is working on 2 of them, and I can tell you the MDRA used signatured a letter to the minister asking for a response on our application, which is from 2019, I believe. It's a year and a half old. So we're working on those, and we will bring the other 2 back in May for sure.
Right. So we haven't heard any news yet from the province on the disaster relief application.
We have not.
I guess they've got their hands full. Okay. That then takes us to motions, and Councillor Butler, who's not here, has postponed her motions with respect to capital gains tax on primary residences and generation squeezing with respect to affordable housing to the May 31st council meeting. We have a council meeting on May 31st, Madam Clerk?
Yes, we do, Your Worship.
Okay. So 10th, 17th, and 31st because of the long weekend? Okay. That then takes us to one of 2 epic motions brought this evening by Councillor Dubanow. And
this was the shorter of the 2, actually.
This would be the time to go get your snack. Okay.
Fair enough, Your Worship.
Please proceed with your motion regarding the updating source water protection.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott. Whereas the Municipal Council of the Town of Fort Erie passed a resolution on October 21st, 2019, identifying that 1,100 private water wells were in operation in the town of Fort Erie, of which 75% were used for domestic purposes, including human and livestock consumption. And whereas the Municipal Council of the Town of Fort Erie further identified in that resolution that council requires the protection of water in the aquifer supplying water to those wells from contamination as a result of any remediation of Pit 1 owned by the Port Colborne Quarries in the city of Port Colborne. And further, whereas report number PDS 23-2021 approved by council on March 21st, 2021 identified that the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, the regional municipality of Niagara, and local area municipalities work together to protect source water. These plans do not generally apply to private servicing. And whereas report number PDS 23-2021 further identified efforts undertaken by the town of Fort Erie through available provincial planning policy, regulation, and legislation to protect source water within the town of Fort Erie without any explicit ability to designate source water protection for private services. And whereas on January 28th, 2010, through Resolution 64-292, the United Nations General Assembly explicitly recognized the human right to water and sanitation and acknowledged that clean drinking water and sanitation are essential to the realization of all human rights. And whereas it would be desirable to ensure that those in our community who rely on wells and other private servicing for drinking water are afforded the same source water protection as municipal drinking water systems, now therefore be it resolved that the Municipal Council of the Town of Fort Erie recognizes and acknowledges that clean drinking water and sanitation are basic human rights and essential to the realization of all human rights. And further, that the Municipal Council of the Town of Fort Erie requests that the Ministry of Environment, Conservation, and Parks consider legislative changes that would permit the expansion of source water protection to private services. And further, that this resolution be circulated to the Honourable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, the Honourable Jeff Urick, Minister of Environment, Conservation, Parks, Wayne Gates, MPP Niagara Falls, Jeff Birch, MPP Niagara Centre, Jennifer Stevens, MPP St. Catharines, and Sam Osterhoff, MPP Niagara West, and further that this resolution be circulated to all conservation authorities and municipalities in Ontario for their endorsement and support. Thank you, Your Worship.
Was there anything that you wanted to add?
No, Your Worship, it's just, I think when we ran into the issue of the Pit 1 remediation, it kind of brought to the forefront not only the potential risks to groundwater, but how they cross municipal boundaries and how we may not have that same planning power for an aquifer that is running well outside of our jurisdiction. And by having the ability to designate source water protection for private services, that would allow us to protect that kind of groundwater the same way we do a municipal drinking water system. And with Fort Erie being a municipality that relies very, very heavily on private servicing, I think we have, don't quote me on this, but outside of Waynfleet, I think us too are very, very heavily dependent on those kind of services. I think it just demonstrates to us here in Fort Erie the potential risk from the outside, and that I'm hoping that the minister responsible will consider those changes to ensure that we can protect our groundwater from contamination when it's used for private servicing. Because when you turn on the tap, it doesn't matter where the water is coming from, you drink that water, and we have to ensure that that water is safe.
I'm wondering if, my understanding is, and I could be wrong on this, that if you draw water from one of the Great Lakes, the Niagara River, one of the creeks that empties into those bodies of water, that's a source water by definition. However, the aquifer, we've learned, is not. So that the private services that you refer to, which would draw water from wells, would presumably be drawing them from an aquifer. Although some people can draw water from the recognized bodies of water. Are you satisfied that the motion, particularly the second paragraph, where you talk about source water protection to private services, is adequate? Should there be an inclusion of the words aquifer and? In other words, should aquifer be specifically referred to? Because that seems to be a stumbling block.
I would be happy to include that, Your Worship, if you think it brings greater clarity to the intent. The one thing that I just want to mention is if it's a municipal drinking water system that draws from an aquifer or a well, there is the ability to do source water protection for that. The issue is the private servicing. And that from what we got from the report, there's some opportunity to do clustering, where if you have a municipality that has private servicing and it's clustered in a small area, there's some flexibility for doing that. But with us here in Fort Erie and with how spread out the private wells are compared to the municipal drinking water system in our core, we don't have that same flexibility. So, Your Worship, if you think that would bring greater clarity to this issue and help it be considered in a more thoughtful way by the province, I am totally open to it. I think we need to have this discussion moving forward, and that's why I brought this resolution.
Yeah, quite in agreement. I'm just wondering whether Mr. Walsh has any thoughts on that.
Specifically, no, but it's a very important matter. We're still monitoring the Port Colborne situation.
Okay. So then what I would suggest, Councillor Dubanow, if you and your seconder are agreeable, in the second substantive paragraph, where you make reference to legislative changes that will permit the expansion of source water protection to, I would suggest you add in aquifers and private services and further.
I'm good with that, Your Worship, if my seconder is.
Okay, and he's put up his hand and nodded his head. Are there any other questions or comments with respect to the motion? Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. I guess my question to it all would be to Mr. Wolf as to when it comes to this, the drinking water systems that we have now, they're basically regulated, and there's how would I say it? The province requires our systems that we use now to be of certain quality and meet certain restrictions or recommendations. And how is this, if we go to private wells that are going to receive the same as those systems, how is that going to be regulated And who would regulate it? Would it be the province regulating it, or would we be responsible? And how, who takes the burden on?
Mr. Walsh, can you respond to that?
Yes, I can. It's still private wells are still a provincial oversight. They do provide oversight to our system, but we operate our own.
Councillor Lubberts?
Yeah, but how if we're going to provide the same protection as source water, right? Do we regulate that as far as like an aquifer to make sure that nobody is interfering with the aquifer, taking too much out of it, not or polluting it, or
the province monitors individual wells, and when a new well is proposed, there's a number of tests you have to go through, but there's a zone of influence as well, is what it's called. And this kind of goes back to the Walkerton issue almost 20 years ago now, where they had cows standing right next to the wellheads. So the cows obviously had an influence over the water that was coming out of those wells, which led to the unfortunate incidents where people died. I think there's a lot more oversight by the province now. Private wells, even though they're on farms, there's a lot more education. So we shouldn't have the issues we had a number of years ago. I hope that answers your question.
okay, all right, thanks.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of the resolution? None opposed, that is carried. Councillor Dubanow, that takes you then to your next resolution. This is the one dealing with the border.
Yes, it is, Your Worship, and bear with me because this one's even longer. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McDermott. Whereas in March 2020, the unprecedented step was taken to close the Canada-United States border to all non-essential discretionary traffic to prevent the spread of COVID-19. And whereas that closure has been extended 30 days at a time for over a year, with only limited exceptions available for purposes deemed essential by the federal government. And whereas the Municipal Council of the Town of Fort Erie passed a resolution May 4th, 2020, requesting that the border remain closed until such a time that the situation in the United States has improved. And whereas the health threat caused by whereas the health threat caused by COVID-19 currently remains, vaccination efforts in both countries are accelerating with the intended objective of having at least one vaccine dose available for all adults in both countries by summer. And whereas the border closure continues to have an incredible social and economic impact on the communities located along it, including spouses, children, and other loved ones who remain separated from each other. And whereas Canada shares the longest undefended border in the world and our largest trade partnership with the United States, and it would be desirable to resume the free movement of goods and people across that border when it is safe to do so. And whereas United States President Joe Biden has signed an executive order directing the U.S. to work alongside Canadian and Mexican governments to plan for the eventual withdrawal of existing land border restrictions. And whereas despite assurances by the federal government that the border will reopen, there has been no transparency on efforts undertaken to achieve that goal, with no plan provided outlining the steps and metrics necessary to achieve that goal or what the opening will look like. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Municipal Council of the Town of Fort Erie requests that Canadian and U.S. officials continue to work together to formulate the plan necessary to permit the eventual full reopening of the Canada-U.S. border to all traffic. And further, that the Municipal Council of the Town of Fort Erie requests that the Canadian federal government provide transparency on the steps and metrics necessary to reopen the border and what a reopened border will look like, and any phasing in as deemed appropriate. And further, that the Municipal Council of the Town of Fort Erie requests that the Public Health Agency of Canada coordinate with their provincial and municipal counterparts to immediately vaccinate our frontline Canadian Border Services Agency's officers. And further, that the Municipal Council of the town of Fort Erie extends their appreciation to all officials in both Canada and the United States involved for the continual efforts on conveying the concerns and challenges border communities have faced during the pandemic. And further, that a copy of this resolution be circulated to the Right Honorable Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, the Honorable Bill Blair, Minister of Public Safety, the Honorable Patty Hajdu, Minister of Public Health Canada, Joe Biden, President of the United States of America, Alejandro Mayorkas, United States Secretary of Homeland Security, Tony Baldinelli, Member of Parliament for Niagara Falls, Brian Higgins, U.S. Congressman for the 26th District of the State of New York, Chris Jacobs, U.S. Congressman for the 27th District of the State of New York, United States Senators Chuck Schumer and Christian Gillibrand, all members of Parliament representing constituencies on border crossing municipalities, constituencies of border crossing municipalities along the Canada-US border, the co-chairs of the United States Congress Northern Border Caucus, and all border crossing mayors and municipalities along the Canada-US border. Thank you for the mouthful, Your Worship.
You're more than welcome. You've got a lot of meat in your preamble. Is there anything further to say?
You know what? I'm glad, and thank you, Your Worship. I'm glad we had the opportunity to hear from a Fort Erie resident who has been affected by this personally. It's an issue when, you know, this forms a binational community, and if you're not from the border area, it's you know, I don't fault people for it, but it's difficult to comprehend how integrated the socioeconomic fabric is. Now, I want to make it clear that this resolution is not asking for the border to be reopened now. I cannot make that clear enough. This is simply just asking for a plan to find out where we do moving forward. The Americans have been very, very successful with their vaccination efforts. It's paid big dividends. You see it in the drop in cases. You see the return to normalcy that's happening there. We've had some challenges here on this side of the border, but that effort is accelerating. We have more, I think it's above 30% now of Niagara residents who have received a first dose. I think provincially average is around that same number. And it's just about asking for the plan. I mean, this past weekend, I think it was the European Commission president announced some plans that they're having with the United States to resume, to reopen their border. And they came out and they said that fully vaccinated travelers from the United States are most likely going to be able to travel to Europe this summer. Considering that we're the United States neighbor, we share that longest undefended border with them. I would hope that our federal government would see the need to continue these efforts, to continue having the discussions. The last thing you want to do is find yourself in a situation or a position where you're ready to do it and you don't have a plan. And whether that plan requires vaccinations, incident levels, I don't know. I'm not the scientist. I'm not the public health official. We have those officials, but we need to be informed, because that plan will dictate what we do on our end. If it involves vaccinations, it may encourage Canadians to go out and get vaccinated. If it means that they might be able to travel to the United States, get their second dose and sooner. There's a lot riding on this. So this here is just, it's asking for the plan. It's it's expressing appreciation, particularly Your Worship. You've been involved with the border mayors from the very beginning, and it's much appreciated. We have the I believe the Peace Bridge is the busiest traffic, not commercial, but passenger traffic crossing between Canada and the United States. So definitely, Your Worship, you and members of council here would have an understanding of this. And it's just, it's getting that discussion started. We're not there yet, but we will be soon, and we need to be ready for it. So that's why I'm presenting this, Your Worship.
I think those comments are all certainly well taken, because you're right. You can't just announce that in 30 days you're going to open the border without having a plan, and we need to have a plan. And as you've pointed out, if people knew what the markers were, that would certainly have an impact on their conduct, if it had to do with vaccinations, if it had to do with case counts. I did want to point out, though, that Western New York in April still had over 120,000 cases and over 2,300 deaths, Western New York. So that the picture is good in terms of vaccinations, and they've had a lot of success in vaccinations, but they're going to be hitting a wall, I believe, because they've got a lot of people that aren't planning on getting vaccinated, and that's going to be an impediment. Nonetheless, that's the type of thing that we need to know, and they need to know, because if vaccination is one of the markers, which it should be, and I presume it will be, we need to let people know so that we can adjust our conduct. This will be a continuing matter of discussion to try to get the federal government moving forward, and this resolution will certainly assist in that effort. So I appreciate you bringing this forward. Any other members of council that have any questions or comments? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. My only comment, and again, I think it's a very well written and goes to the point, and I think a lot of it's inferred and a lot of it's given, but the one word that I don't see anywhere is the word safe. And I'm just wondering if it would be a friendly amendment, if that under now therefore it be resolved in the first paragraph, the plan necessary to permit the safe eventual full reopening. Just add that word safe in there.
May I respond, Your Worship?
Sure.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your comment, Councillor Noyes. I did include it in the preamble where I said, and it would be desirable to resume the free movement of goods and people across the border when it is safe to do so. But if you want to include that as part of the substantive part, if you think it gives it more impact, I'm good with that if my seconder is as a friendly amendment.
And so that word would go whereabouts in the first paragraph of the first substantive paragraph?
After the word to permit the safe eventual full reopening.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Anything further, Councillor Noyes?
Nothing further. Thank you.
Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. And on the same note as Councillor Noyes in the same paragraph, I'm just wondering if Councillor Dubanow would be okay with another friendly amendment. We're requesting that the Canadian and US officials work to develop the plan, and I'm wondering if we should include Canadian and US officials and Canadian and US medical experts work together to put together the plan.
Isn't that implicit if it's safe?
Well, it doesn't say anything about medical experts. It's just saying we want the Canadian and US officials to do it. That to me means Ottawa and Washington.
I'll let Councillor Dubanow address that, but when it says officials, I'm presuming that it's not only elected officials, but it also includes administrative officials, which would include public health authorities. But Councillor Dubanow, I'll let you respond to Councillor Lubberts' suggestion.
No, and I appreciate that response you just gave, because that was my entire intent. It's not just elected officials. There's going to be many people involved. Public health, you're going to have other experts, perhaps even economists and sociologists. I don't know who they would be bringing into this discussion, but I mean, certainly I would consider Theresa Tam a Canadian official. I would consider Dr. Fauci an American official in the United States. And when asking for Canadian and American officials to be involved, the mayor said it best. I think it's implicit that Theresa Tam and Dr. Fauci are officials in both countries, and that they would be involved in these discussions and the plan as well.
Councillor Lubberts.
Okay, well, as long as they understand that when it comes back, we understand that we're not just getting it from elected officials, we're getting the plan from the medical experts as well. And we need to make sure that that's where we're getting it from.
It's now a matter of record because you've raised it, we've discussed it here in open session. So it's a matter of the record. Anything further by any member of council? If not, then I'll call the question. All those in favor of the resolution? None opposed, noting that Councillor Zanko, well, that was a friendly amendment, so it.
Oh, okay, all right.
And noting that Councillor Zanko didn't vote because she had declared a conflict. That is carried. That takes us then to Councillor McDermott's motion regarding the short-term rental appeals.
Thank you, Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dubanow. short-term rentals, that appeals of short-term rental violations be dealt with by the screening and hearing processes under the administrative penalty system, and further, that the business licensing bylaw number 21705 is amended, be further amended to remove the business licensing appeal committee from short-term rental licensing and appeals of violations, and further, that administrative penalty bylaw 111-2019 as amended be further amended to include Schedule 13 short-term rentals of business licensing bylaw number 21705 as being designated under the administrative penalty system.
Are there any questions or comments? Did you want to speak to that, Councillor McDermott?
Yes, I do, I guess, Your Worship. The reason I brought this about is because, we're trying to streamline and put together a good short-term rental process. And I believe that this can be done under AMPS. It will streamline it. It won't take up as much staff time. And I'm concerned about the staff time that it takes up. I mean, for each one, you have to have a bylaw officer. You have to have the IT person. You have to have the clerk. You have to have a person from the EDTS. And of course, then you've got 3 counselors. And we don't want to, well, number one, I don't believe I came to council to become a juror of some sort. I believe that, we have a good third party system for parking tickets. And these are no different than a parking ticket, really. So I think it will streamline it. It will make it easier on staff time. I know during COVID, our staff is working overtime pretty much every day, whether it be at home on their time or whatever. But I know it's like crazy busy. And I just feel this would be a better fit for short-term rentals. If it turns out that at the end of the year, after the report comes out, that it's not, well, we can look at it again. But I think I would like to get this opportunity to see how it would work. And I'm sure it will probably streamline the system. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Noyes.
Mayor Redekop, I do agree with Councillor McDermott. He forgot the legal representative was at our meeting too. There's a lot of people there. And it's very expensive. Not to say that people don't have they should have their day to express themselves, but I think AMPS does allow that. My only thought is, and I don't know exactly how AMPS works, but there is some negotiations, I understand, at times with AMPS that you can say, okay, rather than a $70 ticket, I want a $50 ticket. Am I correct on that? There's some negotiations.
Madam Clerk.
I believe that that Ms. Stolch was going to answer, but if she would like me to.
I'm good with whichever one of you can give us the most concise.
She's more familiar with AMPS.
Through you to the counselor, and hopefully you can hear me. I keep cutting in and out. But generally, through AMPS, we have there's two different levels of screening. The screening officer is the first step, and the screening officer does have some ability to consider modifications based on what they hear from the appellant at that time. We've also have the next phase, which goes to a third party, also some ability to make some adjustments based on their decisions. So there is some leeway and discussion. Not all the time is there negotiation, but depending on the situation, we do have that ability.
Councillor Noyes. You have to unmute.
I just want to make sure that the penalties aren't kind of like whittled down to, oh, well, rather than 300, I'm going to pay 100 because I've complained enough. I want to make sure that if it's a $300 fine, that they're going to pay $300 unless there's extraordinary circumstances. I don't want, just for the sake of expediency, that these fines be dropped considerably. That would be my one concern.
Well, I think we would have to monitor that. We would be told if that appears to be a trend, but you can't give people discretion in making decisions and then try to fetter that discretion. So we'll have to rely upon their good judgment. The system has worked so far in the various areas where we've utilized it. I don't know why it would be any different here.
Just if I can respond, I just think we need to give them clear expectations in regards to the fine. I mean, negotiating a traffic fine is quite different than negotiating a short-term rental problem, because you're affecting other people with a short-term rental, and you could be putting, like if it's a fire code violation or something else, the consequences could be much more serious. So we really want compliance. So I would just say make sure that our expectations are clear when we go into the AMPs, if we go into the AMPs.
I think the reputation of our administrative officials has been one of fairness, and I'm quite comfortable moving in this direction. And when we get a report in the fall, I would expect that if there are some issues that have arisen, if we go to this system, that it will be part of the report. We'll be made aware of that.
Thank you.
Okay, any other councillors? Then I'm going to call the question on Councillor McDermott's motion. All those in favor? That is carried. Now, Madam Clerk, this amendment to the bylaw will come, I guess both of the bylaws will come forward on May the 10th at the special council meeting.
That's a good idea, Your Worship. I was going to bring it back at the special council meeting on the 17th, but you're quite right. We are having one on the 10th, which would bring it back even quicker.
Good. And thank you for suggesting I had a good idea. I'll have to let my wife know. Okay, that takes us then to notices of motion. Councillor McDermott.
Yes, Your Worship. I'm going to be bringing forward a notice of motion with regards to the lack of vaccination clinics coming forward in our community. Just basically the fact that, we're not ever going to look at the end of this virus until everybody has been given the shot, or as many as possible. And I think we have to make it a lot easier for people in this community to get their shots here. Every time I'm talking to somebody, they ask me, why is it that we're not getting our fair share of vaccination sites? And I suggest probably it's because of the fact that even drugstores today are having shortages in the vaccine. And once a vaccine becomes plentiful, maybe this will change. But I've seen some of the remarks, and I got to hand it to you, Mayor. You really stand up for the people of Fort Erie when it comes to public health. We've seen the emails. There's been hundreds of them over the last time. And I'm not happy with the answers that you get. And, all I know is that I think it's our obligation as councillors to make sure that the people in this community are safe. Not everybody has a car. Not everybody can find a friend to take them out of town. Some people don't like driving in the city. There's a million reasons why people won't go. But I think if we're going to make a real clear case for ending this shutdown anytime soon, it's going to be through vaccination. Because really, I think vaccinations are our only hope here. And so I think we have to keep pushing to have more vaccination clinics in Fort Erie. We have to also try and make sure that the pharmacies that are doing the vaccinations in the community aren't having supply problems. And I think we have to do our best in this area. So basically, that's what the notice of motion will be. But they will be substantially shorter than Councillor Dubanow's. I assure you that.
Yeah, that's, Councillor Dubanow was eloquent. Councillor McDermott, I'm sure you would be equally eloquent. But just so we've got it for the record, your notice of motion will be a request that there be more vaccination clinics held in Fort Erie. Okay, and that will be returnable, Madam Clerk. Since we have a special council meeting on May the 10th, I would like that to be added to the agenda for May the 10th, so that it can be dealt with and can be moved forward.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Are there any other notices of motion this evening? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. I actually have 3 notices of motion, and I will not go into a great big long discussion on each one.
That's good because actually you're not supposed to.
The first motion is that speed bumps be installed on Black Creek Road. The second motion that the licensing body and / Health Canada for cannabis be requested not to issue a license on properties for cannabis use if the property was used for illegal cannabis operations in the past. The third is that the town of Fort Erie will seek certification at the base supporter level by the year 2022, and by 2024 seek the leader certification where all direct, full-time, and part-time employees are paid a living wage, which will include a living wage and service contracts for externally contracted employees that provide service on a regular basis to the town.
And those will be returnable May the 31st?
Yes.
Okay, and that will, I think it would be helpful if you were able to work with staff to get or provide us with some background information with respect to both 2 and 3, because I would need to have some background information with respect to this in order to vote on it, and I'm sure other members of council will be the same. And the issue with respect to the speed bumps on Black Creek Road, has that been dealt with in infrastructure services yet? Do you know?
I know that we are having a traffic calming study that's coming at the end of September, but it's not going to be specific to any particular road. The location is going to give parameters, what should be done and where. I do know that speed bumps were installed on this Black Creek Road when Baker Road was closed, and it was very well received, and it solved the problem of speeding on Baker Road. And again, this has been a problem from the residents that have reported this. This is going on now 15 years, and I'm really hoping, if it's even temporary, that we do something this summer, particularly with the increase in the pedestrian traffic on that road.
So when this comes back, and sometime between now and then, I would also ask staff to provide us with some background as to what's happened with the motion that was brought some time ago to request that staff look at the feasibility of another point of access and egress from Douglastown. I'm not sure where that stands, but maybe we can get an update from staff on that as well. Okay, any other notices of motion? Then that will take us to consideration of bylaws. We have bylaws 52 and 53 coming out of the package. Are there any other bylaws that anyone else wishes removed from the package? If not, Councillor Noyes, you have the resolution for first and second reading. Could I get you to introduce that minus bylaws 52 and 53, please?
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Moved myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott that the bylaw package containing 40/2021 to authorize entry into a fire safety grant transfer payment agreement with Her Majesty the Queen in right of Ontario as represented by the Office of the Fire Marshal. Bylaw 41/2021 to amend business licensing bylaw number 217-05 as amended, bracket short-term rentals. Bylaw 42/2021 to enact an amendment to the official plan adopted by bylaw number 150-06 for the Town of Fort Erie Planning Area Amendment number 51, Housekeeping Policy and Map Updates, Town of Fort Erie. Bylaw 43/2021 to appoint Ashley Nero as a Municipal Law Enforcement Officer for the Corporation of the Town of Fort Erie. Bylaw 44/2021 to authorize entry into a grant funding agreement for physician recruitment with Dr. Vicencio Susini. Bylaw number 45/2021 to authorize into a grant funding agreement for physician recruitment for Dr. Mayung G. Kim. Bylaw number 46/2021 to authorize entry into an amending agreement with Dr. Nazar Pizarda to amend the grant funding agreement authorized by bylaw number 66-2020.
Can I just hold you up there? Can I just hold you up for a second? Did we have a councillor that?
Yes, Councillor Zanko.
Yes. Okay. So Did you want to declare a conflict with respect to Dr. Kim? So that'd be
Yes, I
by-
do, Your Worship. And I'm so sorry that I should have caught that and asked it to be separated, but
Just dawned on me because I was reading the minutes of one of the meetings. So Councillor Noyes, if you would remove 45 then and continue on with 46, please.
Okay. To authorize into an amending agreement with Dr. Nazar Pizarda to amend the grant funding agreement authorized by bylaw number 66-2020, bylaw number 47-2021, to accept and declare lands as public highway on the east side of Buffalo Road, 434 Buffalo Road, Susan Androshko Squires, bylaw number 48-2021, to authorize the sale of part of lot 85, plan 448 Birdie, in brackets 0 Seymour Avenue, to Jacqueline Denham. Bylaw number 49-2021, to amend the administrative penalty bylaw number 111-2019 as amended. Definitions. Bylaw 50-2021, to enact an amendment to the official plan adopted by bylaw number 50-06 for the town of Area Planning Area Amendment number 52, Jason Pisicola, agent Jajik Sandhu, owner 80-84 and 94 Jarvis Street. Bylaw number 51-2021, to amend zoning bylaw number 129-90, 80-84 and 94 Jarvis Street, Jason Pisicola, agent, and Jajik Sandhu, owner. Bylaw number 54-2021, to authorize the entry into a Niagara Gateway Economic Zone and Center Community Improvement Plan agreement for Harbor Reality Holdings Incorporated. It is given first and second reading.
All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. That bylaw package as amended is on the floor for any questions or comments. So there being none, that takes us to third and final reading of the amended package. Councillor Lubberts. So everything except 45, 52, and 53.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott. That bylaws 40-2021, 41-2021, 42-2021, 43-2021, 44-2021, 46-2021, 47-2021, 48-2021, 49-2021, 50-2021, 51-2021, and 54-2021 be given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and the clerk under the corporate seal.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor of the amended package? Opposed? That is carried. That takes us then back to you, Councillor Noyes, and perhaps you could read first and second reading for bylaw 45, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Redekop. Bylaw number 45-2021, to authorize entry into grant funding agreement for physician recruitment for Dr. Myung Ji Kim.
Who's your seconder for that?
First, oh, Jordan, Councillor McDermott, be given first and second reading.
All those in favor? That is carried. That bylaw is on the floor for any questions or comments. Mr. Cookett, I presume that the agreement that will be entered into will provide for payment upon completion of the work, something of that nature, similar to past agreements that we've entered into for this type of thing. This is a grant in order to renovate space in a building.
You're absolutely correct, Your Worship. We've already spoke to them. We're going to need receipts of the renovation costs and so forth. So we've already put them on notice. We'll be looking for that.
Right, as in the past. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? If none, Councillor Lubberts, then would you do third and final reading for bylaw 45-2021?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott that bylaw 45-2021 is given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and the clerk under the corporate seal.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That is carried. And then back to you, Councillor Noyes, for first and second reading for bylaws 52 and 53, please.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Bylaw number 52-2021, to exempt certain lots in Plan 59M-459 from part lot control block 113 Marina Drive, Marina / Green Acres Development Incorporated. And bylaw number 53, 2021 to exempt certain lots in Plan 59M-459, part lot control block 114 Plato Drive, Marina Green Acres in brackets, Development Incorporated is given first and second reading. And it was Councillor McDermott that seconded that.
Yes. All those in favor? That is carried. Councillor, any questions or comments with respect to either of those bylaws? Then, Councillor Lubberts, to you for third and final reading of bylaws 52 and 53.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself and seconded by Councilor McDermott that bylaws 52-2021 and 53-2021 are given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and the clerk under the corporate seal.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That is carried. Councillor Zanko, you have first and second reading for the confirmatory bylaw.
Yes, and I need a seconder, please.
Councillor Noyes.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Noyes, that bylaw number 55-2021 to confirm the actions of council at its council and committee meeting held on April the 12th, 2021 and April 19th, 2021, and its council meeting held on April 26th, 2021 is given first and second reading.
All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Councillor Noyes, you have third and final reading for that bylaw.
Yes, move it myself and second by Councillor McDermott that bylaw number 55-2021 is given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and the clerk under the corporate seal.
Questions or comments? All those in favor of the resolution? Opposed? Councillor Zanko, was that a late yes or an early no?
It was a late yes.
Okay, that is unanimous. That takes us to scheduling of meetings. Anyone have any meetings? Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Just bear with me because I've got resolutions and calendar all over my screen. Okay, here we go. So yeah, Tuesday, April 27th at 9:30 a.m. we have a transportation steering committee meeting at the region that will be done over Zoom. There is also at 5 p.m. a meeting of the community health committee, community healthcare committee. I will not be in attendance because I am actually getting my first COVID vaccine tomorrow afternoon, which just happened. On Thursday, April 29th at 4 p.m., we have a transit advisory committee meeting. And on May 5th at 5 p.m., we have a planning and development services subcommittee meeting. I think I got them all, Your Worship.
And what time is the planning and development services meeting?
Sorry, it's 5 p.m. and I noticed on my calendar right now, I put it in at 5 a.m. That would have been an awkward alarm to go off.
That would have been a short meeting.
True enough. Thank you.
Anyone else have any meetings that they wish to announce? Then I'm going to go back to you, Councillor Dubanow, to do the final resolution of the evening.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Lubberts, would you like to second the adjournment this evening? We good?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Lubberts, that council adjourns at 8:33 p.m. to reconvene into a regular meeting of council on May 31st, 2021.
All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you all, everyone.